Picture this. You're offered two options. Option A, you can reach into a jar with exactly 50 red balls and 50 white balls. Pull out a red one, you win $100. Option B, you can reach into a different jar. It has 100 balls, some red, some white, but you have no idea how many of each. Pull out a red one, you still win the same $100. Which jar do you choose? If you're like most adults, you picked option A, the one where you know the odds. Even though mathematically, both jars give you the same chance of winning. Something about that second jar with the unknown mix, though, just it feels worse. This preference for known risks over unknown ones is called ambiguity aversion, and researchers have documented it in adults for over 60 years. But guess who doesn't do this? 8-year-olds. Kids look at those two jars and genuinely don't care which one they pick. In 2015, researchers at Duke University, Rosa Lee, Elizabeth Brannon, and Scott Hutel, ran a cool experiment to find out when humans develop this fear of the unknown. The reference to the study is included in the description of this video. For this study, they recruited 42 children, ages 8 and 9, and 40 young adults in their early 20s. Both groups played games involving colorful bars on a computer screen. Some bars showed exactly how much red versus blue they contained. These represented known risks. Other bars had this gray section in the middle, hiding part of the information. These represented ambiguity, situations where you don't know the full picture. Now, the participants had to choose between these options, or say how much they'd pay to play each one. Real rewards were at stake, toys for kids and cash for adults. So what do you think they found? Well, they found that adults behaved exactly as decades of research predicted. They preferred the risky options over the ambiguous ones about 60% of the time. They were willing to pay more for gambles with known odds. When choosing between two ambiguous options, they consistently picked the one that had less uncertainty. But the children, they were perfectly happy choosing either option. Risky or ambiguous, it didn't matter to them. Their choices were essentially random, right at 50-50. Now you might be thinking, maybe kids just didn't understand the risk. The researchers anticipated this. They built in comprehension checks, these things called catch trials, with obviously correct answers, and they verified that the children understood the probability concepts. Kids who couldn't demonstrate understanding were excluded from the analysis. The children understood just fine. They simply weren't bothered by not knowing. I loved that the researchers also anticipated and tested for one big likely criticism of the study. You see, there's one theory about why adults avoid ambiguity, and it's that we prefer betting on things that feel familiar. We like what we know. So maybe kids don't avoid ambiguity because they haven't developed this familiarity preference yet. So the researchers tested this with a kind of creative task. They showed participants two books, one the child had read before, in this case Harry Potter, and one they hadn't. Then they asked, which book would you rather bet on? You'll have to guess the last word on a random page, and if you're right, we'll give you some extra tokens. Now, objectively, your odds of guessing correctly are identical for both books. You don't actually know what the last word is on page 49 of Harry Potter any better than you know what's on page 49 of a book you've never seen. But 3/4 of the children chose to bet on the familiar book anyway. They showed a strong familiarity bias, just like adults do. So children do prefer the familiar. They just don't let that preference make them avoid uncertainty. Let me tell you why this study has stood out to me among the hundreds of studies that I've read in my career. It suggests that we are born explorers and learn to become worriers. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, we develop this aversion to situations where we don't know all the variables. We start treating, I don't know the exact odds, as if it's worse than the odds are bad. We begin avoiding opportunities not because they're actually risky, but because we can't precisely calculate the risks. Think about what this means for your own life. That career change that you've been considering. You probably know more about the risks of staying in your current job than the risks of the new path. Does that make staying actually safer? Or does it just feel safer because it's the known unknown? That business idea you've been sitting on? You can't predict exactly how it will play out. But your 8-year-old self wouldn't have seen that as a reason not to try. The researchers note something else pretty important in their discussion. Ambiguity tolerance in adolescence actually predicts real-world behavior better than risk tolerance does. The willingness to act when you don't have all of the information turns out to be a crucial life skill. I find this so helpful and inspiring. If ambiguity aversion is learned, it can potentially be unlearned. Your discomfort with uncertainty isn't hardwired. It's software that got installed somewhere along the way. And that software can be updated. So what do we do with this? First, just notice it. The next time you're avoiding a decision because you don't have enough information, just ask yourself, am I avoiding actual risk or am I avoiding ambiguity? Would an 8-year-old see these two options as meaningfully different? What would your 8-year-old self do? Second, remember that the uncertain option isn't actually worse just because it's uncertain. Your brain is adding a penalty that the math doesn't really justify. And third, consider this. Every significant decision you'll ever make, career moves, relationships, where you live, how you spend your time, each one of those involves ambiguity. The odds are never fully known. The most successful people are the ones who learn to act without certainty. Somewhere inside you is an 8-year-old who looked at the unknown and shrugged. That kid is still there. Maybe it's time to let them make a few decisions. So please subscribe to this channel for more videos about thriving in an uncertain world and to be notified when the book Certain About Uncertainty is available for pre-order.